Alright, your General Code of Operating Rules. 7th edition, effective April 1st, 2015. Rules hereby governed by the Operation Railroads listed but must be complied with all employees regardless of the gender whose duties are in the way of the effective, thereby supersedes all previous rules and instructions consistent wherewithin. Alright, this is adopted by, and it goes through A to Z. We're just going to hit the major general responsibilities. Chapter 1. Chapter 2, Railroad Communication Rules. Chapter 3, Section Reserve. Chapter 4, Timetables. Chapter 5, Signals and their use. Chapter 6, Movement of trains' engines. Chapter 7, Switching. Chapter 8, Switches. Chapter 9, Block System Rules. Chapter 10, applicable only centralized traffic control. Chapter 11, rules applicable to the ACS, ATS, ATS territories. Chapter 12, rules applicable to automatic train stop systems and territories. Chapter 13, applicable only with automatic cab signal system territories. Chapter 14, rules only where within warrant control limits. 15, track bulletin rules. Chapter 16, rules applicable to direct traffic control limits. Chapter 17, rules applicable to automatic train control territory. Chapter 18, section reserve. Chapter 19, section reserve glossary abbreviation index. And we're going to see if they have a, no, they did not leave a, so let's go. Chapter 1, General Responsibility. Safety. The safety is the most important element of performing due to the ability of the rules for the essential for the jobs have safety, continued employment, maintain a safe course, indicate with the tab with the ensure they take the safe course, alter and attentive. Employees must be careful to prevent injuries to themselves or the others. They must be able to and attentive to perform their duties to plan with the work, avoid injuries, accidents, injuries, and defects. Report with the first means of the communication any accident, the end personal injury, the defect within track of the bridges, signal that any unusual condition may affect the safety deficiency operation of the railroad. When required, with the furnished written report prompting after the reporting incident condition of the equipment and tools. Employees must check with the equipment and with the condition of the equipment and tools. You with the perform their duty with employees must not deal with the defect of the equipment and tools until they are safe to you. The employees must report any defect with the proper authority. 1, 2, personal injuries and accident. Care for injured. When passengers or employees are injured, do everything in responsible to care for them. Witnesses. If the equipment is involved with a personal injury, loss of life, or the damage of the property, the employee charged must immediately share the name of the driver, the occupants, for all of the persons involved, include the persons at the scene with the accident, with the curb, with the NS, or arrived soon after. Employee in charge must secure the name of the regardless of whether their persons are admitted to knowing anything about the accident. Employee in charge must also obtain the license number of the nearby automobile when necessary for the employee with the assist with the obtaining of the information, which must include the reports covering the incident. When signaling devices are approved, the flagman over the duty of the employee in charge of assisting the employee with the must drive to determine where, who, and among the witnesses can testify whether the signal devices were functioning properly with the flagman performing his duties properly with the possibility of the name of the witness testifying about bells and whistles signals. Equipment inspection. An accident result of the personal injury or the death of all tools, the machine, or other equipment involved will include the accident site must be inspected promptly for the foreman and another person in charge of the work of the other competent inspector. The inspector must prompt forward to his manager for the report. The inspection of the report must include the condition of the equipment and the name of those making the inspection. Equipment inspection must be marked with identification placed in custody of the responsible manager employee until the claim of the department is contact with the determine the disposition. Mechanical inspection. Engine of the car of the other equipment involved in the accident, the result of the personal injury of the death of the equipment must be inspected before leaving the accident site. Mechanical department employee must further inspect the equipment in the first terminal for this employee must promptly report inspection results. Proper manager reporting all cases of the personal injury while on duty. Company property must immediately report with the proper remain of the prescribed complete with the personal injury that occurred while off the duty that will affect the employee with the performance of the duty that must be reported with the proper manager as soon as possible. The injured employee must also complete with the prescribed written form of the returning service. If the employee receives a medical diagnosis of the occupational illness, the employee must report with immediately to the proper manager's statements. If accepted and authorized with the proper management information concerning the accident of the personal injury that occurred with the person, the employees must be given them to an authorized representative of the railroad and officer for the law. Information above the fact of the concern of the injury of the death of the employee may give it only for the person in interest, such as injured employee with the relative of the injured and deceased employee with the authorized representative of the railroad officer of the law. Information on the files and other privilege of the confidential or reports of the railroad concerning the accident's personal injury may give only to the authorized representative of the railroad. 127. The furnishing information employees must not withhold the information, fail to give all facts of those authorized to receive the information regarding unusual events, accident of the personal injury, or rules violation. Rules 131. Rules and regulation instructions. Safety rules. Employees must have a copy of the permit to comply with the safety rules issued with a separate book with another form. General code of operation. Employees governed by these rules must have the current copy of the referred to while on duty. Hazard material of the employees who in any of the handling of the hazard material must have the copy of the instruction regulations for the handling of these materials. Employees must be familiar with and comply with the instruction regulation. Air brakes. Employees who the duties are effective with the air brake operation must have a copy of the rules and instruction for the operating air brakes and train handling. Employees must know and obey with these rules and instruction. Timetable special instruction. Employees who the duties are effective by the timetable special instruction must have the current copy for the refer while on duty. Train dispatcher for the control operator. The train dispatcher control operator must have the copy of the rules and instruction for the train dispatch for the control operator. They must be familiar with obey with the rules and instruction classes. Employees must be familiar with and obey all of the regulation instruction. They must attend the required classes. They must pass the rest required examination. Explanation. The employees must ask supervised explanation for any of the rule regulation instruction that they are unsure of. Issued or canceled modified rules. Issue the cancel modified with a track both within general orders. Special instructions. General orders are numbered consecutively or issued with the cancel with the designated of the manager to contain information for the instruction related with the rule of the operating practice for the place. Any of the special instruction regulation conflict with the general order before beginning each day of the work with the trip crew members and any other whose duties require must review the general orders that apply with the territory they work on. Circular instruction and notice for the circular instruction of the other information issued the cancel by the designated manager before beginning each work day with the work trip crew members with any of those whose duties required must review that those apply with the territory they will work on. 14114. Carry out rules and report violation. Employees must cooperate with the carry out of the rules and instruct them most properly with the report any violation. Proper supervise with the must also report with any of the condition and practice that may prevent threaten safety of the trains, passenger, employee with any misconduct, negligence that may affect the interest of the railroad. Good faith challenge. Right of due challenge. The federal regulation have the provision to allow the employee with the right of the challenge of the directive of which was made for the employee with good faith determination which violated the railroad operating rules retaining to shoving, moving, leaving, including following adjacent track, handling a hand operated switch and fixed derails. Good faith challenge procedure employed with the main form of the supervisor issue with the directive with good faith determination has made with the directive which violate the railroad operating rules relating to shoving, moving, leaving, equipment on follow adjacent track or handling hand operated switches or fixed derails. 2. Supervisor will not require the employee to comply with the directive union with the challenge resolve. The supervisor may require the challenge employee to perform other tasks but not relate with the challenge until the challenge is resolved, or direct an employee other than the challenging employee to perform the challenge task before challenging is resolved. The employee serves directly inform of the challenge to determine the challenge task does not violate the rules. Resolve of the good faith challenge. Challenge may resolve with only one of the following: supervisor acceptance for the employee, request for the employee, accident with the directive, employee agreement with the comprised solution acceptable to the person issuing the directive. If the challenge cannot be resolved with the supervisor issuing the directive to determine the employee's challenge has not been made with a good faith, there is no alternative than the director or railroad will provide with immediate review of at least one manager, which will not be conducted with the supervisor issuing the challenge directive of the supervisor subordinate. Resolve of the challenge with the same option available to resolve with the challenge of the initial supervisor. If the manager making the final decision conclude with the challenge directive would not cover the employee to violate any requirement of the involved rules, review of the manager's decision of the final with the notice of further immediate review. Manager will inform the employee with the federal law may protect the employee from the retaliation of the employee refusal to do the work of the law of the Good Faith Act. Employee making the challenge will be affordable the opportunity to document with the writing electronically and proof of the manager making the final decision before the employee tour of duty is complete. The employee will afford the opportunity to retain a copy of the protest. Upon request of a review of the verification decision, written request of the time shown with the employee that has the right to further the review of the designated review manager within 30 days after the expiration of the month during the challenge occurred with the designated review manager will verify the proper application of the rule in question. Verification decision shall be made with the writing of the employee's right of the remedies. The good faith challenge is not intended to abridge any of the rights and remedies available to the employee under the collective bargaining agreement of any or federal law. Drugs and alcohol. The use of the possession alcoholic beverages while on duty or on company property is prohibited. The employee must not have the measurable alcohol in the breath of any other bodily fluids with the reporting of the duty while on company property. Use of position and toxins over to counter the prescription of the narcotics controlled substance medication that are made adversely safe the performance of the prohibited while on duty on company property. Examine examination of the medications permitted with the medical practitioner and used as prescribed. Employees must not have prohibited substance with the bodily fluids reported with the duty while on company property. 1.6. Conduct. Employees must not be careless of the safety of themselves, the other, negligent, insubordinate, dishonest, immoral, quarrelsome, or discourteous. An act of hostility must the will, regardless of the negligence, affect with the interests of the company and employees will cause the dismissal that must be reported if difference to the duty or to the performance of the duty will be tolerated. Motor vehicle driving record. Certified conductor, engineer, person seek the initial certification commence convicted of the operating a motor vehicle under the influence impaired with the alcohol controlled substance must report the conviction of their supervisor within 48 hours of being notified. As applied with the rule of the conviction also include the refusal to undergo such testing. A law enforcement official will seek to find out whether the person operating under such of the influence or impaired with the alcohol controlled substance. Participation in state as sponsored diverse program. Guilty pleas with completed state actions. Cancel, revoked, suspended, denied driver's license. 162. Notification of felony conviction. Conduct an employee with leading to conviction of a felony. Any of the felony is prohibited. An employee with convicted of a felony must notify proper authority of the fact within 48 hours after the employee received the notice of conviction. 163. Notification, deterioration, vision, or hearing. The certified conductor, the engineer, person seeking the initial certification, knowledge of the hearing of the vision deteriorated cannot be corrected with the minimal acceptable requirements of the outline figure regulation 2040 distant visual acuity 7th degree and field of the vision ability to recognize distinguish between the railroad color signal hearing loss to no greater than 740 decibels must report the fact immediately with the proper authority with the medical department. Altercations, employees must not enter into altercation with each other to play practical jokes, wrestle while on the duty or on the railroad property. 1.8. Appearance of employees reporting with the duty must be clean and neat with a must wear with a prescribed uniform when required. 1.9. Respect with the railroad company. Employees must behave in such a way that the railroad will not be criticized for their actions. 1.10. Games, reading, or other media. Employees doing duties must not play games, personal or electronic devices other than provided by Rule 221 electronic devices or railroad magazines, newspaper, other literature not related to the duties when the on-train engine with the performing safe-related activities if it would delay and interfere with the required duties. This is not prohibited the employee from having such materials included with the personal luggage. Sleepage. Employees must not sleep while on duty except as outlined in Rule 111-1. Napping. Employees will recline with the eyes will closed with will be in violation of this rule. Napping is permitted with the train crew except for the passenger commuter yards over the under the following condition. Crew with the waiting for the departure of the train with the train stopped en route waiting to be meet the path of the train waiting for the track of the work waiting for the helper locomotive similar condition restrictions follow the job. Briefing must be conducted with agreement to breach for the as to who will not be lost for the remain awake. The crew member to have the right responsible to refuse to all other crew member to take the nap. If doing so, the jeopardy of the personal safety of the employees, the train, or the public. One crew member must remain awake at all times. Nap period must not exceed 45 minutes with the time of the need with the fall asleep with the napping employee with the relieved of all duty. The train must delay with the employee with the taking a nap with the conditions allowed with the train to move. Employee with the remain awake with immediately waking with the napping employees before napping while waiting with the arrival of the train. Employees must ensure all the duties have been completed with the duties of reviewing the general orders, notices, securing the reviewing the track warrants, track bullets, and other paperwork available before napping is allowed. En route, the employee charged with locomotive control must at least have a 10-pound brake pipe production. Place the generator full switch and off at the time of the reverse and removal. If the employee is to remain awake with the must remain on the locomotive while others on the locomotive are napping except with the inspect with the passing train with the waiting the arrival of the makeup of the train with the one crew member must remain awake while waiting the train's arrival the makeup of the initial terminal and left the arrangements have them made with the third party to wake up all of the crew members. All crew members are deadheading, otherwise relieved of the duties by may nap. Weapons. While on duty, railroad property, the employee must not have firearms or other deadly weapons, including the knife with the blade longer than 3 inches out of the railroad policy or authorized to possess firearms in the course of the work. Reporting complying with the instruction. Employees reporting to comply with the instruction. Supervisor have the proper jurisdiction. The employee to comply with the instruction with the issued by the manager of various departments of the instruction. Employees apply to these duties. Employee jurisdiction. Employees are under the jurisdiction of the supervisor of the railroad operating on the way operating of the railroad. Otherwise, instruct the employees will be governed the safety rules of the air braking, train handling rules, hazard material instruction railroad that they are employed by the operating rule timetable, special instruction the railroad that they are operating on. Duty reporting to accident. Accident must report with the duty designated time, play with the necessary equipment of the performance of duty, the spend of their time on the duty, working on the railroad. Employee must not leave the assignment of the exchange duty all other to fill their assignment without proper authority. Continued failure by employees to protect the employment will call the dismissal. 116. Subject to call employees subject to the call must indicate that where they can be reached and must not be absent of their calling place without notifying those required to call them. 117. Hours of service level, the employees must comply with the requirements of federal hours of service level. The employees are expected with the off-duty time and prepare for the work of the employee with a report with the duty with the legal off-duty time with expired before accepting the call. The work employee must notify that the individual making the call off-duty has not expired. Notification of communication available to the employee must notify the trained dispatcher another authority of the time that allows required to them to be off the duty. The employee must provide the notification earlier than enough than that they may be relieved of the transportation provided by the exceed the hours of service. Exceeding the law, employees must not exceed the hours of service without proper authority. However, they must not leave the train engines cars of the main track without proper protection. Employees must secure the train properly if possible before they exceed the hours of service. Except provided by this paragraph, the employees are then relieved of all duties. 118. Authorized unemployment. Employees may not engage in another business occupation that would create a conflict of interest with the employment of the railroad would interfere with the availability of service on the proper performance of their duties. 119. Care of property. Employees are responsible for the property of the carrying all railroad property. Employees must return the property for the property authority request them to do so. Employees must not use the railroad property for their own personal use. 120. Alert the train movement. Employees must expect the movement of the train engines, cars, and the other movable equipment at any time on the track with any other direction. Employees must stand in front of the approaching engine car with the other moving equipment. Employees must be aware of the location, structure, obstruction clearances or closes occupying roof. The employee whose duty requires them to occupy the roof of the car engine must do so only with the proper authority when equipment is standing on. 122. Unauthorized person on equipment. Do not permit unauthorized person on equipment. Promptly notify the train dispatcher, supervisor, unauthorized person, emergency responder, or observe under between the railroad equipment and made with the emergency responder on under between the railroad equipment. The train dispatcher, supervisor arrange for the qualified employee to all ineffective equipment to verify the proper securement of the as soon as possible. Altering equipment with the proper authority, employees must not alter or notify, change the design, any of the manner, restrict the interfere with the normal function, any of the device of the equipment, engine cover, the other railroad property, except for the case of the emergency. Employees must report with the proper supervisor change made in an emergency. 129. Clean property. The railroad must be kept in a clean, orderly, safe condition. Railroad building facility. The equipment must not be damaged, defaced, or order. Only information authorized for the proper management required by law must be posted on the railroad property. 125. Creditor property. Unless specified, authorized employees must not use the railroad. Creditors must not receive the payout of the money of the railroad account. Employees must not sell in any way, get rid of the railroad property without the proper authority. Employees must carry all articles of value found on a railroad property promptly report with the article with the proper authority. 126. Gratitude. The employees must not discriminate amongst the railroad customers. Employees must not accept the gift of the rewards for customer supplier of the contract with the railroads unless authorized by the proper manager. Divulging information. Employees who make up the handle of the care of any of the following must not allow unauthorized person to access them, disclose any information contained in them. Corresponding reports, booklets, bill relating, will, billets, tickets, and statistics fire. Employees may take every precaution to prevent loss of the damage of the fire. Employees may report with the promptly the train dispatcher fire in need of the right of way unless the fire is being controlled with the danger of the spreading of the bridge for the other structure for the crew members that must stop the train, help their extinguish the fire with the cover of the fire is known that they must properly be reported, avoiding delays. Crew members must operate with the train and engine safely efficiently. All employees must avoid the unnecessary delay with the possible with the train and engine crew waiting to stop to eat, but they must ask for the train dispatcher at least 1 hour and 30 minutes before desired stop. Riding engine. Possible crew members on head end of the front. Each train must arrive in the control compartment of the engine while riding on the head end of the conductor will arrive in the control compartment. Repairs of foreign cars. Crew members of the repair of foreign cars must report the repairs in the prescribed form. 132. Overheated wheels. When overheated wheels are found on the train must be stopped and held for the minimum of 10 minutes to allow the heating to equalize through the wheel. Inspection of freight cars. Personnel are not on duty primarily to inspect the freight cars. Each car is placed for the train and may be moved after receiving the safety inspection as follows. Cars must be checked for leaning, sagging, improper position of the truck, objects hanging, dragging of the car, extending from the side, insecure attached doors, broken, missing safety appliances, contacts leaking from placard, hazard materials, car and secure coupling device, overheated wheel journal, broken or cracked wheel brake and that fails to release, staff type brake not fully raised position, and apparent hazard that can cause an accident. Open top loads include trailer that contain with unflat cars must be loaded safely. If the width of the height approach with a clear restriction must be cleared with the proper authority. Freight car with a defect that makes the movement unsafe will be corrected with the set out of the train when the defect is discovered en route. Know the type of the defect with the proper tag with each of the tag of each side of the car. The freight car within with three bad order tags. Anything in the car is eighth to move to the nearest repair point. The conductor will remove the one bad order tag from the side with the two tags. Conductor will use the written information from the tag to inform the other crew members of the restriction. Flat spot for the wheel on the one piece of the equipment. If it has a flat spot more than 2.5 inches long with the wheel, has an adjoining flat spot on each of the 2 inches long. The equipment must not be moved faster than 10 miles an hour. So if the equipment must be set out with the first available point. Dump doors. Be sure the dump doors on the cars are closed after loading. The dump is dumped after the car is moved short distance with the dump doors open to make sure the doors for the chains were the clear and tracks of the crossing. Step the dimensions and load. Alright, excessive dimension, low of the place, except for the dimension of the knee of the head of the train, struck with the will be issued the train with handling, except for the dimension, low of the nose structure of the head been issued regarding handling of the car with the conductor with immediately notify the train dispatcher crew handling equipment, except for the dimension of the equipment, the mast, unsure of the equipment cleared by name or by objects included with the equipment adjacent traffic. The train cannot reach a point with enough clearance. Crew members must make sure the protection is provided against the movements of the adjacent tracks. Open top load cards. A flat and open top car with an open top trailer on flat car, container on flat cars with loads are likely to shift must not be played within the train with the next to flowing the train length of the makeup of the permanent occupied outfit, car, passenger car, engine, caboose, or shipment with the automotive vehicle with the machinery that is not fully enclosed. The restriction does not apply with the cars with the permanent tie downs. 130 out shipments. The susceptible damage shipment is with paying the surveillance ship with the suspect with the damage each such for the automobile track truck that combines other similar equipment. The machinery must not be placed closer than the fifth car behind the open top car load with the combined with the coal, sand, gravel, lime, soda, ash, etc. subject to wind, perfume action adjacent cars except that include the shipment is suspect with the damage that are loadable in the car with a fully enclosement shipment or fully protected by covering any open top car with the sand, gravel, lime, soda, ash, and etc. by subject to wind, vapor, and fume action and other then solid unit train must not be placed immediately ahead of an occupied caboose. Accuracy of the speed indicator. Engineer must verify the speed indicator accuracy as soon as possible after taking charge of the train. If the speed indicator is not accurate within 3 miles an hour plus or minus, at the speed of 10 to 30 miles an hour to within 5 miles an hour plus or minus speed above 30 miles an hour, the engineer must immediately report the variance to the train dispatcher. Reporting engine defects. The engineer will report any engine defect with the proper form and notify the relieving engineer when the needed engineer is coupled to the occupied passenger cars. Engines coupled to the equipment that include the occupied passenger cars may not be left without any authorized employee in charge. Trains in detour. Trains with the detour. Any of the railroad engineers detour train will operate with the engine unless otherwise approved by the manager railroad. The train is to be detoured over. The pilot will inform the engineer speed restriction signal sightings and make sure the train with the detour over the railroad safely. Stopped in tunnels. Engine stopped in the tunnel. Engine is stopped in the tunnel but cannot move promptly. With the crew members must shut the diesel engine at once. Down the diesel engine once. Shut down the Wasco, the similar type of engine, and make a full over the air brake application. Apply the handbrake to prevent the movement in case of the air brake leak. For the passenger of the train stopped in the tunnel with a deep snow, crew member of the passenger train stopped in the tunnel or deep snow must shut off any of the air circulating system, including the air conditioning, ice machine, generator, shut off air intake shutters, turn off the blower fans. Notification stopped in the tunnel with the deep snow. Train dispatcher notified of immediately so the proper arrangements can be made to protect the person and equipment. When these requirements will not apply with the air current carry with exhaust gas away from the train with the safety of the passenger crew members must be in the first consideration. Duties of the train dispatcher. Train dispatcher supervise the train movement and any of the employees connected with that of the movement. Duties of the control operator, the operator, control operator, the operator, the owner of the direction of the train dispatcher. The duties concerned with the handling, track warrants, track bulletins, line up the movement of the trains, any other instruction issued by the train dispatcher. Duties of the yard master. The yard master responsible for and shall direct supervise yard crew, clerks, and all other employees with the working in the yard. Yard master must see that they work in safe division in an economical manner according to the rules, regulations, instruction of the railroad. Yard master must ensure the proper regular movements of the car, especially with the proper makeup of the train and their movement in and out of the yard. All locations of the yard master and on duty employed with the train with the engine yard service must comply with the yard master instructions and location of the no yard masters on duty. These employees will work according to the instructions as an employee. The duties of the crew member. Conductor and engineer are responsible for the safety protection of the train with the observer the rules of the rule must ensure the superordinate with the familiar with the duty with the determined extent with the experience with the knowledge of the rule with the most instruct with them and the necessary for the how to perform their work properly with the inform and safety any of the conditions not covered by the rules may mistake Precautions to provide protection. A conductor is responsible to supervise the operation, administrator of the train. When the train is combined with more than one conductor on board, the conductor must be seniority, takes charge. All of the person employed with the train must abide by the conductor's instruction. If the instruction in danger of the train safety, violate the rule within doubt, and arise with the concern of the authority of the proceeding of the safety, the conductor must consult with the engineer. Will be equally responsible for the safety and proper handling of the train. Certified conductors must have the current certificate in their possession while on duty. Conductor must abide with the engineer and the train dispatcher any of the restriction placed on the equipment being handled. The conductor must remind the engineer of the train is approaching an area restricted. Limits of the authority: track warden, track bulletin, radio speed restriction. Conductor must inform the engineer after the train have asked for the last station, but at least 2 miles from the restriction. When the conductor is not present, the other crew members must obey the instruction of the engineer concerning the rules and safety and protection of the train. Freight conductors are responsible for the freight car carried by the train, and they are also responsible for ensuring the freight is delivered with the accompanying documents to the destination. Of the terminal, freight conductors must maintain our required records. Engineer responsibility. Engineer is responsible for the safety and efficiency of the operating of the engine. Crew members must obey the engineer's instruction concerning the operating of the engine. Student engineer, other qualified employee may operate the engine under the close supervision of the engineer, and employee with the operating the engine must have this current certification in their possession. Engine must check with the conductor to determine any of the cars or the units of the train required with special handling. All crew members are responsible. Should the train is operated safely of the rule of the observer, that all crew members must act with the responsible to prevent accident with the rule violation. Crew members of the engine control of the compartment must communicate with each other the restrictions and other known conditions that affect with the safety of the operation. Train sufficient in advance of the such for the condition to allow the engineer to take proper action. If proper action is not being taken, the crew members must remind the engineer of such for the condition required action. Crew members of the engine and control compartment must be alert with all the signals. As soon as the signal becomes visible, audible, the crew member must communicate clearly to each of the name of the signaling affecting the train. They must continually observe the signal and announce any of the chain of the aspect of the unit until the train passes the signal. The signal does not comply with the promptly, but the crew members must remind the engineer or conductor of the rule requirement. If the crew member does not agree with the signal indication, regardless of the signal as most restrictive indication is observed, when the engineer or conductor fails to comply with the signal indication, take proper action to comply with the restriction rule. The crew member must immediately take action to ensure the safety of the emergency brake valve to stop the train if necessary. Alright, time. While on duty, the crew members must have the watch. Other employees must have the access to the watch or clock with the watch or clock with the must be in good work condition and reliable to display with the hours and minutes. And second, if not vary with the correct time by more than 30 seconds, may be compared with the time source designated special instructions. Chapter 2, Railroad and Communication Rules.